Every day I am getting one step closer to having another healthy baby, and Caraway Home is helping me do that. Their ceramic, naturally slick surface cookware allows you to cook with minimal butter. They're very easy to clean, just a little warm water, you wipe it down. And the best part is that Caraway products are made without any toxic materials like BFASs, BTFEs, and a bunch of other things like I can't even pronounce. So you don't have to worry about that. Right now, visit carawayhome.com/TSFS to take advantage of this limited time offer for 10% off your next purchase. This deal is exclusive to my Sarah Fraser Show listeners. So visit carawayhome.com/TSFS or use code TSFS at checkout. Caraway, non-toxic cookware made modern. It's time for you to see what all the fuss is about, read about their 5-star reviews, and why so many TSFS fans buy Caraway Home. Order now.
Now streaming only on Disney Plus.
My name is Taylor. Welcome to the Eras Tour.
Experience Taylor Swift's record-breaking Eras Tour.
Does anyone here know the lyrics? Prove it!
Taylor Swift The Eras Tour, Taylor's version, with 4 additional acoustic songs. Now streaming only on Disney Plus. On April 5th,
You must be very careful, Margaret. It's the girl.
witness the birth
Bad things will start to happen. Evil things.
of evil.
It's all for you. No, don't.
The first omen
I believe the girl is to be the mother.
Mother of what?
is the most terrifying
666 is the mark of the devil.
movie of the year.
It's not real. It's not real. What's not real?
Who said that?
The First Omen, rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent. Only in theaters April 5th.
It's a podcast, not a
Drake
cast,
Bell.
God, hey,
How are ya?
every day she'll make you say, oh my God.
Yeah,
Good.
I bet. I mean, have you had a moment to take a deep breath? What a week for you.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been able to I mean it's a roller coaster. It's a lot of processing and everything, but yeah, I have a really great support group and everything, so it's been nice.
Oh my gosh. Well, tell us about that. How has the response been over the past week? Is it what you anticipated? Has it been more anxiety inducing? Tell us like where you're at, how you feel about the response.
It's been both. I mean, the response has been really great. A lot of support. But when you're talking about something that you kept inside for so long and you're finally getting it out and being able to process it and work through it. Yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster. Sometimes it takes a hold and then sometimes but at the end of the day, it's been a really freeing experience. This has been something I've held inside for 25 plus years, and to finally have it out there has been, yeah. I mean, it's an up and down, minute by minute kind of thing.
I mean, Drake, watching Quiet on the set, Quiet on set, I don't even know how you kept that in, for all these years. And was it ever leaked? Was it ever leaked that you were in that case? Was that ever out there and we just never knew it? Or
there were YouTube videos from some creators that were playing detective and putting things together, putting dates together. Oh, maybe this is Drake Bell because it happened during this period and he was the boy on this show. And so there's been some, but it's never been officially leaked. But there's been some guesses, you know. Guess you could
How
say.
how did it come about that you were going to be in this documentary? Did the producers just reach out to you and they had their suspicion that you were the person in the Brian Peck case? Like, how did that even come about? Or it just happened that they reached out and you said, I will tell my full story.
Well, I've had this happen before, and I had a really bad experience with another documentary that came out years ago and requested my involvement. And when I declined, the response I got was unbelievable. I mean, they were in the email, they said that people like me were the problem, and this is why things aren't going to change in the industry because you won't, people like you won't speak out and won't come forward. And I mean, it was just all this shaming of me not wanting to be a part of their documentary. So I've always been very cautious and on edge whenever approached to talk about such a sensitive topic. So when the producers for Quiet reached out, I was really trepidatious about even responding to their message. And they had done a lot of research and investigation. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was where I was at in my life at the time. I'd been struggling through a lot of things, and I just finally responded, and we started a back and forth, and I was expressing how I don't want to be a part of it, and it's too sensitive, and I don't want to talk about this, and I don't know what it was, but Emma, the woman from the documentary, she just, and especially because of the experience I had with the other documentary, it was completely different. So she was very sensitive. She was, and we kind of became buddies before, like she, and I could tell that she was coming from a genuine place when we started our back and forth, and it wasn't of an angle of, okay, what do I have to say to get him involved? And I'll just say what I need to say to convince him.
Yeah.
I really felt a comfort with her. And so I said, if you're willing to come out to LA and sit down and we'll, at least I'll meet with you. So it got to, no, I don't want to be a part of it. Back and forth. And then, well, let's sit down, but I'm just going to talk with you. Like, maybe this will be a great experience to just get it off my chest and tell someone who isn't my family or somebody who was there during this time. And the first time I've told somebody who's, basically a stranger. And I just felt really comfortable in that interview. But I was going through so much in my personal life. And after that interview, I ended up checking myself into rehab. And during that time, it was a very intense, a very intense place that I checked into. And so we were going through a lot of trauma therapy, a lot of group therapy, a lot of one-on-one therapy. I mean, it was your entire day was filled with working through and processing this with a clear mind and unearthing all of these things that I hadn't faced head on, or if I had tried to, it was too painful. And so through that process, once I got out, I thought to myself, maybe this is a good time to reach back out to them and say, hey, I'm not 100% yet. Let's talk some more, but I'm getting closer to feeling comfortable with finally sharing my story.
Wow. What was it that brought you to rehab? Did it feel like just drinking was not manageable, or alcohol? Well, obviously alcohol, but drugs? Like, what was it that felt unmanageable in your life that you thought, okay, I need
You know,
a patient program?
it's interesting. It wasn't, I don't think at this point it was, I need to go get clean and sober. I mean, I was making bad decisions and doing things that would, harm myself and harm others. But I was really, my mind was spiraling.
Mm.
I was dealing with so much inside that I I think I just reached my breaking point. And that's what I found really interesting about and helpful about going to rehab was it wasn't just about getting your system clean and not, okay, all right, I've been this long amount of time without anything, so I'm all better now. Let's go back to the world. Um, it was really going through and processing, what is the cause and what's making you act this way or make these decisions and in these ways. And it really was more for my just my mental state.
It's incredible that you had that awareness because some people go their whole lives and never deal with, traumas in our lives. I've been in therapy for years, and my therapist always tells me what you resist persists. And it's one of my favorite sayings because, obviously you and I had different childhood experiences, but like my dad died fairly suddenly when I was 14. And in my family, you talked about it for 2 weeks and then you were expected to move on. And of course, death doesn't work like that. Something traumatic.
That
Like,
generation, that era and generation was, I mean, I'm sure we're very close in age. It was like that
yeah.
back then. It was move on.
I wondered if I'm about 4 or 5 years older than you are, but I wondered if your parents were they like that when you called them and you had told them about the situation with Brian. I mean, did you guys talk about it for a while? Then you had to live the trial, which was, I'm sure, brought up everything more magnified. But then after the trial, was it like, okay, we're just going to go back to just trying to be a normal family and move on?
No, I mean this had a profound effect on my mom, on my dad, on my brothers, my sister, my nieces, my nephew. I mean, it was some of the younger nieces and nephews are just learning about it now, but it had a really profound effect on my family, and it's something that we've dealt with ever since it happened. So my family, either although my family is a classically broken family and separated, but we're all very, very close, and so it has been something that wasn't just swept under the rug. It's been something that we've been battling for many, many, many years.
Look, that's also one of the things that's so amazing about this documentary is your dad sat down and your dad was so vulnerable. And so, I mean, that your dad had this gut feeling, for years and was willing to say that. I mean, that's hard to say.
Yeah. And it's I mean, my dad is a very emotional guy, and he, he just has such a big heart. And I was very cautious about involving him. But I was getting this feeling of, even though I was battling with, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Telling my story, should I be doing this? But also with that feeling of, wow, it's all out there now. I can get it off my chest. And I felt that maybe that would be cathartic and beneficial for my dad to be able to do. As a parent, now having the experiences as a parent that I've, for the short amount of time that I've had, I kind of had a realization of like, I'm sure that my dad, I'm gonna start crying. I'm sure my dad has puts a lot of blame on himself, and And I thought that this might be an opportunity for him to be able uh, to realize that, uh, you know, that it's one person's fault. It's not, sorry.
No, take your
It's
time. No, I'll cry too, because I think what that documentary did is it really showed how you never think it's going to happen to you or your child, and and how slowly over time somebody works into your family unit, or works on you as a child, and before you know it, you're in a situation that a lot of kids are in. Maybe they spend the night at somebody's house, and lots of times nothing happens, and then sometimes it's the start of something terrible. I thought it did such a great job, all the parents that spoke in that documentary, of how easily and how you can, a lot of things start out innocent enough, right? We can justify,
Yeah.
like they talked about the different scenes, the different conversations in the writer's room. You're like, okay, well, that kind of felt weird, but all right, So I'm sure you guys are processing so many emotions, and
and also shedding a light on how, in my case, how they, if you do start raising questions or trying to go, hey, this doesn't seem right, how you become the target. And it's like, oh, okay, that person, I gotta figure out a way to remove that person because they're in the way of what I want. Um, I think that was brought to light in this documentary as well.
oh my gosh. And I think for child actors, right? And I'm curious your thought on this. But one of the things for you all is like you become a big financial contributor for your family. I have to imagine all the other stars, so many of them that you worked with, are financial contributors for their family. So it's like if I lose this job, it's my whole family could be out
Yeah,
to
I mean,
some degree.
I've definitely seen that a lot. I was fortunate enough to my mom was a professional billiards
Yeah.
player and two-time world champion
She's
and one of the best
amazing.
players.
Yeah, she's
She's in
like
the Hall of
incredible.
Fame, and so she had, her thing. My dad had always been working. I mean, even though he had set aside a lot to be able to facilitate, the long drives to work, or when I would book jobs to be available, and we were basically partners, working
Yeah.
together. He still had a business. He would just delegate, okay, I'm going to take less response here. You handle this, you handle that. And so um, I was fortunate enough to not have the burden of, oh my gosh, is my family going to make rent next month? But I've definitely seen that in Hollywood, where, parents put this pressure on the kids going, it's your responsibility. I'm sacrificing all of this for you and for your dream, and it's your responsibility now, for us to be able to put gas in the car. And that's a lot. I'm really thankful that wasn't a burden for me, but I think that that's something that Brian saw and knows and knew was very prevalent in Hollywood. So I think that was a very easy way for him. And at my age, I didn't know that 50% of my money was going to taxes and that 10% comes out for agents and 15% for managers. I mean, I knew that, but you can't calculate in your head. So he was putting in my brain, Drake, you should be rich. Like, you did a commercial you should have had $250,000 from that, and your dad's stealing your money. I mean, look how much it happens in Hollywood. Like, your dad's taking your money. Where is, you're making, and on the Amanda Show, I mean, we weren't making, after taxes, management, agents, we weren't making crazy amounts of money. We didn't get residuals on Drake and Josh. We don't get residuals on Amanda's show. So we're really hung out to dry. So all of this perception of, oh, well, they were living this privileged life and making all of this money. I mean, it's just a fantasy, But we were getting to do what we love to do. I mean, I was getting to do some kids like to go play baseball and kick the soccer ball around on the field. I love to get on stage and entertain people. And so I was just happy to be doing what I was doing. But there wasn't a huge payday. I mean,
Wow.
that's what we were working towards.
Sure.
Maybe one day we'll get into movies and we'll get the big paychecks and we'll be able to do this. But it was being put into my brain that, look, you're on a television show. You should have all this money and you should have this. And I saw the checks. It wasn't like my dad was keeping anything from me, but you only see your gross income. You don't see, okay, well, now we have to pay taxes. And now, okay, your manager gets this, your agent gets it. You're not seeing that. And when you have somebody that's so, infiltrated your life saying, oh, something is amiss here, then you start to believe it and you start to go, well, yeah, I mean, I'm working so hard. Like, where is all that money? And then as an adult, you realize, oh my gosh, like that was all a tactic,
I call him the no-Zempic, been on Ozempic doctor. I'm talking about Dr. Applin and his wife who founded My Optimal Body. I am so happy about this. These are the first mindful eating-based doctors I have ever partnered with. They see patients nationwide, and they are seeing more patients who have been on Ozempic, and Ozempic has failed for them. What makes My Optimal Body so unique, and why am I endorsing them? It's because Dr. Applin actually looks at food additives, your addiction to food, your mental health. They do a whole look at you, including your gut health. Many of Dr. Applin's patients are working out, restricting their diets, and still gaining weight. Why is that? Because something's going on in your body and with your mind. Visit myoptimalbody.com to request an appointment. Be sure to tell them the Sarah Fraser Show sent you so you can qualify for a free personalized assessment, plus a bonus free 30-day supply of their gut repair product when you sign up for a customized plan. Again, that's myoptimalbody.com to request an appointment.
This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. Ewan McGregor stars as Count Alexander Rostov in A Gentleman in Moscow, the new limited series based on the best-selling novel. Stream it on March 29th with the Paramount Plus with Showtime plan. Visit ParamountPlus.com to try it free.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
How do you feel overall about the documentary? Do you think it was there anything left out that you were hoping would be put in there? Is there anything you feel like wasn't explored enough?
As far as left out, I think that the no residuals is a big thing because that only happened in kids' TV. I mean, if you worked on a network show and you were a minor and you were on Two and a Half Men or you were on Fox or you were on ABC, you were able to perform and do your job, and knowing that if you have a successful show and it gets syndication, and I mean, this is something that can set you up for life. And maybe some people at that age go, hey, I really enjoy this right now, but I have other interests and I would like to explore in my future. And so it would be nice to have something set up for me when this is all over. And they have the opportunity to have that. But in kids' TV, I don't know why, but they were having us sign these contracts that didn't give us any residuals. So we would get paid for the week of work, but then they're able to show the show in forever. I mean,
in every other country, in every other language,
not just every other country, but it literally said in our contracts, I don't know the exact verbiage, but it said across the universe, like as if we were one day gonna like Elon was gonna get us to Mars and we had TVs, like they own the rights throughout the universe. I mean, not just if it plays in another country, but and we'd never get any residuals for that. And so it was interesting when the SAG strike happened and people weren't getting residuals for streaming. I really felt that because I was like, man, this is what we've been fighting for and dealing with for so long. And it really is. I mean, I know it's a monetary thing and it's not, I mean, a lot of the things that we went through are way more intense than just not having a means to make a living. But it really is a testament to how these networks that are dealing in these kids shows really just hang you up to dry. And then they make money off of you, millions and millions and millions of dollars. I mean, it really crushes you when you're trying to pay your rent or you're trying to put gas in your car. And I talked to so many other people who are, actors when they were younger that are struggling so much, but then they turn the TV on and they see their face and then they see 20 commercials for all of these products and they're selling ad space with their face from when they were 13, 12 years old. And they're sitting there with their kids going, I don't know what's going to happen next month.
Crazy.
So it's the abuse, the hanging you up to dry. And I mean, we really felt like we were chewed up and spit out and nothing from the networks at all.
What have you made of Nickelodeon has come out, their reps, since this is, since Quiet on Set has been released? A lot of people have come out of the woodwork and you've responded to some of them. What did you make of Nickelodeon saying we investigated? I mean, they even put that in the documentary. We've investigated every complaint. We didn't know a lot of this was happening. We're brokenhearted about what happened to Drake. What do you make of their responses and others?
Well, I find it interesting when my dad would go to executives and say that there's behaviors on set between adults and minors that he's finding uncomfortable, and they would shoo him away. And so, I mean, if that's their idea of an investigation, I mean, it's very faulty, and I don't think that they would discover anything with an investigation like, oh, you don't understand, he's just that way. That's just how he is. I mean, that's not an investigation. So that's a bold-faced lie. And also, it was a very well-tailored response saying, learning about his trauma, because they couldn't say that they didn't know about this or know what had happened or anything. So I think that was a really well-tailored response by probably some big attorney in Hollywood. But I mean, if really there was, I find it pretty empty, their responses, because I mean, they still show our shows. They still put our shows on. And I have to pay for my own therapy. I have to figure out if there was anything, if there was any truth behind them actually caring, there would be something more than, quotes on a page and by obviously a legal representative telling them exactly how to tailor a response.
Where are you with Dan Schneider? I mean, in the documentary, you say Dan is the one that was one of the only people that called you when this happened and said, "How can I help? What can I do?" Dan's come out with a video. He did an interview yesterday and said, "I owe people very deep apologies." I mean, you're kind of the only person that comes to his defense a little in the documentary, whereas he didn't have the sexual abuse or assault claims, but certainly that he was a tyrant to work with. I mean, has anything, how do you feel? How do you handle that relationship?
I mean, I can't take anything away from anyone's experience, especially things that I didn't see or things I wasn't there for. I can only speak on what my experience was. And at that time, no Nickelodeon executives reached out to me. I learned later through the letters that there were actually people who wrote letters and they were sealed. So not everyone on set knew who had written letters. But I learned that later. I mean, there were multiple people that had supported him that went on to work on my on Drake and Josh. And I worked with these people every day, and I thought they were my friends. And they were people in positions of power where they were my bosses. I mean, they were directors or they were producers or they were, it was a situation where I was surrounded by, I thought I was safe. I thought I was okay. I got rid of, the cancer has been carved out. Like we're better now. And I had no idea that for 4 years, I was working alongside people who had supported him and probably in the back of their mind were, thinking of me in a certain way. And I thought that they were my friends. But
now, wait,
like I said,
for context, when you say that these letters were sealed, right? And now, of course, you've had Ryder Strong, you've had other actors come out that wrote letters for him and said, well, we didn't realize the full extent of what he was charged with and accused. He told us a whole different story. And I think you have thoughts on that. But when you say that they were sealed, at the time, did these executives know that it was you? Or because you were a minor, your identity was kept secret? They might have known, like maybe you had worked with him, or did they know it was you?
Okay, I can't speak for someone else and give a 100% yes, everyone, these people knew, but there were 50. I mean, I say 50. I don't know how many people a courtroom holds, but there were, I mean, I know that there was at least 41 who wrote the letters. But when we went to court, his entire side of the courtroom was full of directors, producers, writers, actors. It was just mind blowing. And I was just sent into like a state of shock when I walked into that courtroom, and people that I thought were my friends, people who knew me, people who I worked with, and so to say that people in the industry didn't know, I mean, I think would be a little naive, because everyone talks, everyone. And so, because when Dan reached out to me, it was prior to the court hearing where everyone was there. And so it made sense for him to ask me, does this have anything to do with you? Did Brian hurt you? Are you okay? Like, is this, and I responded, because I had worked with Dan for quite some time at this point, and I felt comfortable enough in our relationship to be able to open up to him more than I would probably somebody else. And I just told him, I said, yeah, Dan, like this is what he's been doing, and this is what he did. And he got very, I think he was being sensitive to me because he knew what I was probably dealing with. But I could tell in his voice that he got there was a lot of hurt and anger, and but he was very sensitive to me. And that was my experience. So, but, watching the documentary, you hear other people's, the things that other people are saying, and you can't, especially with what I've been through, and you just have to, I can only react and respond to what I've actually experienced.
Sure.
And also not say anything that would take away from somebody else having the comfortability and the strength and the bravery to tell their story, and to share their experiences. So, but he was he really helped me through that time in my life. It was shocking. So and then learning later, I mean, it was totally re-traumatizing to later get these letters, which I just got last year, and seeing, I mean, it was every letter I turned, it broke my heart when I would see the name at the end of the letter and go, what? We were, I thought we were friends, and the way that they portrayed me in the letters and all of this.
God.
It was,
I mean, in the documentary that you had to be that Brian had to be tempted. I mean, this is a fucking minor. It's like, what?
well, I was also I mean,
sorry, I shouldn't be.
no. It's
But I mean,
okay.
it's
okay.
outrageous. I mean, you watch this and your blood boils. Your blood boils as a parent, but as a fan of these shows, as like now working, still in the entertainment business. I mean, these letters from respectable actors and actresses is, I mean, for them to say, oh well, Brian had to be in a position he just couldn't say no. I mean, about a grown man is
And the first, I say this in the documentary, but the first experience when it started to shift and go south, I was sleeping on his couch, which I'd done many times before and didn't feel anything strange, and there was never anything weird. And I mean, maybe I did have some feelings of like, okay, like, come on, dude, like, but I woke up to it happening. And so to read that he must have been so pressured and tempted and this, I'm like, I mean, and every time I slept on his couch, I mean, I would, it's like when you sleep over at your friends, it's like, I didn't like change into pajamas. I didn't like put on, I was in my jeans and my shoes were probably on the floor, and I was in my shirt that I was like in my clothes, like I just like crashed on the couch. But then waking up to that and then reading this in the letters is like, but what did I do? I woke up to this happening. And so it's just, it's tragic. And I'm sure that, people were told different things but at the end of the day, if you have a friend sit you down and say, I did this thing with a minor, but it's his fault, and try and frame it in any, I mean, I couldn't imagine a way that someone would frame that to where I would then still be their friend. I mean, unless it was, I'm being accused of something, I did not do this, it's going to come out, they're going to do an investigation, they're doing an investigation, someone is saying something happened and it did not happen, and this is going to be proven, and you will see, please get behind me. That I could understand friends going, all right, well, let's let this play out. Let me see where this goes. Let's see this play out. And at sentencing, if these things come out and they're proven false, then all right. But to sit there and say, yes, I did this.
Yeah, he confessed.
But it's not how they're painting it. I mean, I can't imagine framing it in a way where 41 people, adults, say, oh, well, that totally makes sense how you're telling me. That makes sense.
Has anyone called you and genuinely apologized and you feel they are sincere?
That wrote the letters?
Yeah. Or anyone in general? Wow. No one.
No, no one that wrote the letters. Tom DeSanto, the producer from X-Men, he released a statement, an apology statement, which I really appreciate. And that was really, I mean, I want to say brave, because this is a very, very tough thing for everyone involved. I mean, and that's what happens when people like Brian do what they do. It creates, it's a ripple effect. And so that was really cool of him to do. But no, I haven't gotten an apology or sorry. Well, that's my brain, from anybody that had written letters or was involved in supporting him at all.
Wow. What about, online? Man, like people have had some wild reactions. Other former child actors. I mean, Ryder Strong, right? I mean, they came out. Now they say they regret the letters, but you don't really. It sounds like you don't believe them. Is that still your feeling now, a couple days in, or and Will Friedle, or?
I'm not going to say I don't believe them, or that they're not sincere in their feelings, or because that's just not right. I don't know what they're feeling. I don't know what they're dealing with emotionally with this. But if I'm wearing if I was an outsider looking at this, I would find it very interesting that they framed it as, oh, we're going to talk about this person because we talk about every episode of the the shows of Boy Meets World on the podcast, and we're coming up to some of his episodes, when in reality they had just been contacted by the documentary, letting them know that their letters were about to be released, which they didn't mention. And they mentioned that they slipped in, and we were asked to write letters, which we did, but we were manipulated. We were this, we were that, and I mean, I feel really bad, like feeling like I'm throwing somebody under the bus, but this is just how my perception of it is. They seem to frame this as, and this is traumatizing for me because they were in the courtroom. And they frame it as, if you listen to that podcast, you would think that they were 15 when they wrote these letters. I mean, you would literally, and when they compare things like, well, it made sense to me because when I was 23, I dated a 30-year-old woman. And I'm like, yeah, you keep using this word woman. Like that made sense in your mind, that Brian could forcibly do all these things to this 14, and then turning 15-year-old kid. But this is hard to talk about. But it's
we can move on.
Just my final thought on it is, if you listen to that podcast, you'd have thought they were 15, 16 when they wrote these letters. But I mean, Will was 27 years old, and Ryder was 24. And I worked with Will on Spider-Man years later. And honestly, I don't remember a lot from that time because it was so traumatic. I black out a lot of information.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's a survival mechanism. And I think that it really helped because I didn't really remember, and I don't think I put two and two together when I was working with Will on Spider-Man, that he had been in the courtroom. I was just working with another actor, and we were doing our thing and got along. But he says on the podcast, I really want to sit down with this guy. I hope he's doing okay. Well, I mean, I don't know how many episodes we did, but we did a lot. And I mean, there was ample opportunity to do that, and there still has been. And I don't know, but I'm probably saying too much on that subject because, like I said, everyone deals with trauma in different ways. Everyone has made mistakes in their life and gone left when they should have gone right, and have regrets. And we're all human. And I mean, I'm not one to speak of not making mistakes in my life. I've definitely made bad choices and done things that I regret and am remorseful for and need to process and work through. So that's just how I feel about that. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I
I
mean,
can't take anything away from their sincerity and their honesty and their bravery on sharing that on such an open forum. I mean, I really can't.
yeah.
Because I don't know.
Well, I'm just wondering overall how you're handling it, because every child actor that was associated with you is this week is in the spotlight, I mean, for making the right move or the wrong move, I mean, Josh Peck just put up a TikTok video that a lot of people feel like is to you. I'm wondering.
Well, that is definitely not to me. And a lot of these things this is a very sensitive subject, and we were really in our formative years going through this. And so I think that Josh, I think it was just bad timing. I think he was just using a TikTok sound that he thought was funny and decided to use, and it might have just been like the perception is kind of bad timing for him. But I mean, he's reached out to me personally. We've talked, and he's, I was there. I know how much this, affected you and I saw what you were going through. So, yeah, I feel really bad that a lot of people are kind of going, your silence is deafening. And it's like, well, don't jump so quickly, because you don't know what's happening behind the scenes, and you don't know if, and I'm sure, Josh may have felt, if I just go public with the support or something, maybe it'll look opportunistic, or maybe it'll look like I'm trying to clear my name or do something. It means a lot more that he reaches out to me privately. So I really just want to make sure that everybody understands that, we've spoken and he's in my corner. But some things are very sensitive and people don't want to share everything with the public immediately a day after the documentary comes out, or the day after they see that they've learned that I've shared my story. So a lot of people have been reaching out to me privately, Josh being one of them. And so I think that that it's just bad timing, and I think that people want to jump on everybody and get everybody, but focus on people who wrote letters of support. Focus on people who aren't coming out and saying that was a mistake, and that's why I can't, completely hate on Ryder and Will, because they've voiced that what they did at that time was a mistake, and they're remorseful for it. And that's really important. And that's really scary to share with the public, that you were in this position and that you were put in this position, and you felt at the time that, whether you were pressured or whether you felt that was the right decision at the time, like, who knows? But that's very scary to just put out to the public. So be careful jumping on people like Josh. Because we've had our ups and downs. But we're like real brothers. It's like sometimes you want to hang out with your brother, and sometimes you want to knock him in the head. And
Yes.
and we've had our ups and downs. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think we do. I'm gonna cry again. I think we do have a really special relationship, and I would always be there for him, and I know that that he would be the same. And I know that there's been some catty remarks and things that have been said by him and by me, but I don't want the public jumping on him, because he has, in my times of struggle and times of pain, he has been somebody there that has
Wow.
He has been somebody there that's been really important and special throughout my life. And that's you can't put a price on that, or you can't even, it's something that's very unique, especially in this industry, to have somebody that you share so many memories with, and going through our adolescence. And I mean, we met each other when we were 13 years old, and we've been inseparable. I mean, our names have been inseparable ever since. And so, yeah, it breaks my heart when I see comments like that on his posts and things. And people need to realize that, sometimes when people are that close or have
Drake,
this type of relationship, it's not something that they're just going to like blast out to the public right away. That things do happen behind the scenes.
You're very young still, obviously in your 30s, but when you look back, do you feel like you wish that you had never been a child actor? I mean, when you look at that whole scenario, when you look, I mean, you're what you did with this documentary is going to impact and change so many people's lives in the better. Parents, people are going to find the courage, and I bet they're already messaging you, that are not famous, who have been assaulted as children, who have been through sexual abuse. I bet parents, you are going to change so many people's lives by sharing that story the way that you did. Do you look back, though, at that Nickelodeon experience? My God, so many of you have had incredible trauma. Amanda Bynes. I mean, it hasn't been easy for Ariana Grande or Jamie Lynn Spears, or my God, I mean, do you wish you never were a child actor, or are you like, every single thing I've went through has made me the person I am now and who I'm going to be the next 50 years? I mean, where are you at? Because I don't know. I look at you guys and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know that I would wish that on any child.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I can only speak for myself and in my experience. It's a hard question to answer, because as much as I would have preferred to not go through the pain and have everything that I've been dealing with on the inside for so many years, I at the same time was doing absolutely what I love to do. I mean, it's like my air, it's my oxygen, it's how I breathe. I mean, ever since I was 5 years old, I just wanted to get on stage and make people laugh and sing songs and make music and be an entertainer. I mean, that's who I used to watch Elvis and Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis and Lucille Ball, and
oh my God, yeah.
Just say, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And also, in mine and Josh's case, we were lucky enough to have a show that was a success all around the world. And when I go out into the public and I have people come up to me and say, oh my gosh, my mom was in the hospital during the time of Drake and Josh, and my only escape during those moments were watching the two of you, or when, I didn't get along with my brother growing up, but when we watched Drake and Josh, at the end of the show, I'd be like, okay, I'm Josh, you're Drake. And we would bond, and my family would sit around the television set, and we would watch you guys, and it would be an escape for us and everything that was going on in our lives. And I think back to those times so fondly, and those were such wonderful moments in my life, was to just get to watch the two of you and watch your show. So it's like, would I want to take that away, or not have had an impact like that on so many people's lives around the world? Yeah, I mean, it's hard. And I think that really is having these things that have happened, more so looking at it as, okay, this is something that has shaped you, and you can move forward. And especially now, realizing that, keeping it inside. And I hope this is something that people can take away from this, is keeping it inside for so long is only going to, I mean, unfortunately, my life and experiences are an open book, and,
I was gonna.
a Google search away.
Yeah.
And so, I think people can see what happens when you're just thinking you're alone and that everyone is against you, and especially because of the courtroom, I felt like, who am I going to tell? They're just going to go on that side of the courtroom and write a letter. So who am I going to tell? I had a very, very small group of people from the industry that I could trust. I had a friend of mine who was a makeup artist on Drake and Josh, is one of my dearest friends to this day, who was always there for me, always in my corner, always supported me. We were like family. It was someone I could cry to. It was somebody I could talk with, but it was a very small group of people. And so having all of that build up and kept inside for so long, I mean, you see the DUIs, the problems in my relationships, and you end up hurting people along the way. And then, but I think going back to your question of the decision to go into rehab, was everything that was happening was just so you start, because it's, even though you might not know yourself completely, because there's a lot of processing and things that you have to work through, but you do know yourself, and when you're doing things that are so out of character for who you are and who you want to be and who you envision as what you give back and put out to the world, and to the people around you and to your loved ones and your friends. And when you start to not recognize who you are and what the choices you're making, that's another reason why I was like, wait a second, I need to figure this out.
I'm telling you, I hope you give yourself credit for even having the awareness in your 30s to do that. Because, I mean, did it make sense when it was you've been married, divorced, your ex-wife has made allegations against you. You've had the child endangerment charge. I mean, when those things were happening, did you say, were you like, this isn't my fault, I'm being victimized? Like, or did you know that you were out of control, or it didn't click until you got with that therapist?
It's both. I mean, there's been so much said that, the New York Times reported that I'm a registered SO, and that I pled guilty to SA on it, which is all not, which they just printed a retraction, by the way.
Did
New York
they?
Times. Yes.
Are you kidding? So tell us about that.
Later,
okay.
2 years later, the New York Times just printed a retraction to their article that everybody reposted, every TikToker, every YouTuber. I mean, New York Times writes it, it must be true. And they finally, I think it was like 3 days ago, printed a retraction to the article that completely destroyed my life, my reputation, my everything. It's difficult. So you're battling with things that are being said about you that are completely false and untrue, but you're being completely attacked for it, which is why I empathize with what, people going after Josh or going after this, and it's like, whoa, like, slow down, because I know how that feels. But also juxtaposing that, I have to take responsibility and accountability, because nobody grabbed my hand and forced me to do those things. I mean, other than Brian. But like the decisions that I made are mine and mine alone. And you have to process that and work through it. But it's difficult at the same time when there's so much misinformation and lies and things being said about you that are just,
Why do you, to this day, because you and I have a good mutual friend, and, my understanding is to this day that major media outlets still do not want to interview you. And is that changing since this documentary? Why is that? I mean, and do you think that's going to change now with the retraction of this New York Times story?
I hope so, that the retraction helps, and that I don't know. I just it's difficult because I don't want to put on like my tinfoil hat,
Mm.
but when Brian was convicted, that's a huge story. I mean, that's and when you see how well connected he was, and how high up it went, his connections, um, and the support he got. I mean, it's a huge story that somebody was arrested that was working on Nickelodeon, and this is what happened, and you know, and if you Google Brian's name, thanks to the documentary, there's a plethora of information. But for 25 years, you couldn't find an article that reported it. There was one Daily Mail article that came out years later after another documentary came out, that wrote about him like a blip. But you couldn't find one article on this story, which if I'm a reporter, I'm jumping on this story and I'm going to start digging deeper and wondering what the heck is going on at this kid's network, especially when 3 months prior, which you saw in the documentary,
Yeah.
3 or 4
Look,
months
there were
prior,
3 offenders.
Jason Handy was arrested, who also I worked with on Drake and Josh. Excuse me, on the Amanda Show. He worked on the Amanda Show. And so 4 months prior to that, he's arrested. He works on the Amanda Show. Then Brian gets arrested. He works on the Amanda Show. That's a big story. And you couldn't find an article. Even when they were investigating for this documentary, they found it so surprising that they couldn't find anything on this case.
Well, they managed to find one headline, right? Because the most shocking thing, right, is Brian serves this 16-month sentence and then goes back out into the public, is a registered sex offender, but then by the couple that were big-time producers, they rehire him for Disney. Now, it does seem like somebody sounded...
In their letter, he wrote, I would be more than happy to work with him again. And if I had an opportunity, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I would be more than happy to if given the opportunity to work with him again.
Which they did. They hire him. But someone must have sounded the alarm, right? Because he was fired from... Did he go on to work again after Disney, or was he fired from Disney and Brian has not worked since?
No, I mean, check his IMDb. I mean, he's worked continuously throughout the years. I mean, he's been produced, he's acted, he's a regular at horror conventions. He's out there. He's worked steadily since. But yeah, it's interesting because there's no media coverage on this story, but my DUIs are blasted everywhere. And I know there's a difference between, because they're like, well, who is this guy? But it's still to not find one article, maybe it's not blasted or whatever, but there was, and maybe this is my conspiracy brain, but I mean, there was a major media suppression on that story. And I don't know if it was a favor that was called in. I don't know if it was people protecting him. I don't know what it was. But the fact that a New York Times article about me will come out and say things that you literally take 6 seconds to go onto a website and see what the answer to your questions. But you print that I'm a registered SO that pled guilty to SA on a minor and all this, which is
all false, by the way, right? It was
true, so false, but it's everywhere. And so it makes you, I mean, as a person that's at the, in the midst of it, it makes you start to think. And then once I saw these letters, because I didn't know the letters existed, I thought, okay, yes, there's bad actors in Hollywood. Keep your antennas up, be very diligent on, and be very careful. But I didn't realize that it was an onion, that there was all of this support and all these people who just felt like, oh yeah, that's fine. That's no big deal. I had no idea that we were surrounded by those people too.
There is a perception online with, with the public that Hollywood protects predators. I mean, and that Hollywood is a predatory ring. I mean, it started with Corey Haim,
Yeah.
and
Well, I'm so the fact that we have, because and they link the word conspiracy to all of this. I mean, if Corey Feldman says something, if this actor says something, if this young star says something, oh, it's just a conspiracy. It's just this. It's just that. They shoo it away. But I got 41 letters in black and white that show me exactly what this is. This has nothing to do with somebody putting the puzzle together and creating some grand conspiracy. I mean, I have in black and white. I would love to work with him again. It wasn't his fault. So one of the letters said he must have been pressured beyond belief until he finally caved.
Yes,
I mean,
that was
these
one.
are the people who are going on and working and making major motion pictures and working on television shows. And, I mean, Alan Thicke, TV's favorite dad. I mean, think about that. You have somebody who the world sees as the TV's favorite dad working on a show with kids, and he's the father figure, writing a letter in support of someone who has just admitted what they had done. I mean, it was so shocking, and it's so new to me because I knew people were in the courtroom. I saw it. I didn't, I've blocked a lot of the faces out. There's some that are burned in my retinas because of the way that they were looking at me. And it was a very scary situation. And some people I grew up with watching, maybe I didn't know them, but I grew up watching, and now they're in a courtroom staring me down as I look at them and say, you're going to remember this for the rest of your lives, and I'm going to remember what happened to me. And that's what I'm going to take away from this. But I hope that you one day realize and don't ever forget that you sat in this courtroom. And so it's new to me because I didn't know that these letters existed.
Drake, did they explain in the documentary how those letters became unsealed? Was there like how did that happen? Did they explain that?
It was because of this documentary. The people investigating for this documentary knew that they had researched the case.
Okay.
They had found out that the letters existed, and they were familiar with the process of this. Like,
they did probably a FOIA, which is like if you're you can request and yeah. But see, that's interesting. I wonder if they messed up, like if they weren't supposed to release the letters and they did, or if a statute of limitations had expired. It's interesting.
No, just no one had ever petitioned to release them. It's just a process. And I think the reason that they were sealed was because it was a John Doe case. So it wasn't something like, more recent cases where we've seen people who wrote letters of support and they were immediately released to the public, which we've seen recently. But it was because they were, because it was a John Doe case that they were sealed, but you could still petition. And if the court decides, yeah, we will unseal these for reasons that make sense to them, then they will, because it is a matter of public record. But nobody had requested that until now. And it was a process. It was a little lengthy process. They had to go to court, say why and what and all this. And then the court finally decided, yeah, and they handed the letters over. And when I was handed the letters, I mean, it's a book. It's a book. And it's unbelievable.
Drake, what do you hope comes from this documentary? Look, you even calling the police and reporting Brian, you thought things were going to change 20 years ago. And they didn't until today. What do you hope comes from this documentary?
Well, first and foremost, I hope that people feel comfortable and get the strength to share their stories. But then also, I just hope that there's safeguards in place. I mean, the law right now, Brian can't work one-on-one with a minor. He could go and work. He couldn't go into a room by himself with a minor and work on dialogue with him. But he can work on sets. As long as there's other adults around, he can work on sets with children, according to the law right now, as long as it's not one-on-one and there's another adult present. So, I mean, we have to just we have to make changes.
My God.
I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it's,
I mean, there were tons of adults around when Brian attacked you. I mean, that was a
well, it allows them to go right back to where they offended in the first place and go right back into that environment. And
yeah. What do you personally want to do? Do you want to work in Hollywood again? Would you love to be in film? I mean, you have an incredible music career. You live in Mexico City now. I mean, Mexico loves you. You have fans still worldwide. But if you what do you want to do next?
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm this is I did this for promotion or anything, but I am working on a new album. And I just released a new music video that actually talks about this. I don't know if you've seen it, but after this, you should check it out. Because it deals with a lot of the very opening scene, deals with what I went through in the documentary, my car accident, going to rehab, all of these things in my life, and kind of trying to work through and make that a part of my past. Yeah, I mean, I've got concerts coming up. I mean, that's what I love. That's my escape. I love to write music. I love to perform. I love to be on stage. And so that's where I go. And that's another sad thing is, I started coming out to Mexico and all over Latin America in 2008 when I performed a concert out here. And the reception for my music was insane. I mean, I was playing 10,000 seat arenas and selling out, and I'd come back to the States and no one was really listening to my music. They were watching the show, but my music, but my music that was my passion. I was writing it. I was making it. That's what I wanted to do. And so I started coming to Mexico all the time and all over, Peru and Chile and Bolivia and Brazil and all over Latin America. And I don't know why, but my music really took a hold there. And so I was going to where my fans were and getting to play these big concerts and festivals, and 50,000. I played in Peru to 100,000 people. And I come here and it's an incredible feeling. And it's really sad because if you look on TikTok or you look on Drake Bell escaped to Mexico, and how cruel to say about Mexico, because I'll tell you what, if anything that I've done in my past is they kind of say if half of what has been said was true, Mexico wouldn't embrace me either. I mean, it's not like I could escape here and everything would just be okay. I mean, that's such a
Yeah, you feel like that's just been a terrible misconception put on you.
Yeah, huge. And it's he escaped, he changed his name, he's living down there now because, because of what he did here and this and that. And I'm I've been coming here for 15 years. This has been a second home to me for so long. Have friends and family and I've been doing so much out here that it really is a bummer that, the fans out here and people have to read, oh, he's just in Mexico. They think he's, luckily they know that I've been coming here for years and this is, what it is. But it's a bummer. And it's there's plenty of artists. I mean, Tina Turner did a Larry King interview where she said, yeah, I live in Europe.
Yeah.
And well, but you're a huge star here. She's I'm not as big as Madonna. Some places in Europe, I'm bigger than the Rolling Stones. So why wouldn't I go to where my fans are? I'm an entertainer. I want to perform. So I'm gonna go to where I'm able to do that. And to see it painted in such a way that I travel outside the United States because I'm trying to escape, and it's ridiculous.
I mean, Drake, look, I could talk to you for 2 hours. I mean, I really could. I want you to come back because, no, I mean, we didn't even get into, like, I just think it's fascinating, like, at what age you learned to speak Spanish. Like, you're an incredible, you know, you're so smart. You're so comedic as an actor. Did you ever do stand-up? I mean, I could talk to you for hours. So I want you to
Josh was definitely the stand-up. I never had the courage to go.
Really?
Yeah, no, he was the one at 10 years old that he was getting on stage and making people laugh. We used to go out and watch him. He'd do some stuff at the Improv or the Comedy Store. And I was always blown away because I was like, he'd get off stage and I'm like, man, first of all, you killed it. And second of all, how do you, like, I can get up on stage and perform a song, but to get up on stage and expect and tell a joke and hope people laugh, I mean, that's the most terrifying. It's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, you're just your career, and I have to imagine. I mean, do child actor parents reach out to you now? I mean, yeah, and you know what's so awful is like
there's been a few that have reached out that of some people I've worked with growing up and things. So yeah, there's been a few.
Well, I would reach out to you as advice. You know, the thing is like, you guys tell these stories and these cautionary tales in Hollywood, right? We hear them all the time, whether from child actors or older individuals. And yet the lure of fame, people will do anything, you know, sacrifice their kids, their family to be famous. And I don't know, it takes a special type of person. I
think that's something that's interesting because throughout my career, I have had parents ask me, you know, is this a safe environment for kids? Like, what should I look out for? And I had an answer. You know, it was, look, there are, just like if you're taking your kids to karate class, if you're taking your kids to soccer practice, be there. Don't leave them alone. Don't trust anyone with your kid. Doesn't matter who it is. Don't trust anyone. But now with these letters, it's a whole different, I have to structure a whole different answer because...
Well, I guess, okay, but one last thing, though, is because, like, it seemed like when you guys were all little, like 9 years old, 10 years old, there was no problem. Like, your parents were all there. And they in the documentary, they say that about Amanda Bynes' parents, about other child actors. But then once you guys got to, like, 15 and you sort of began thinking for yourself, that's where that trouble, it seems like, began. Because it's like you are almost too old to, you know, you either could get emancipated from your parents, you know, I mean... What advice? I mean, how do you deal with a teenager?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, yeah, that's the hard part because, you 13, 14, you know everything. Your parents don't know anything, you know, especially when you've been doing something for so long. I mean, if, say, for example, you've been playing baseball since you were 5 years old and then you're 13, you're 13, 14. I mean, that's a long time to be playing baseball. And then your dad, who doesn't play baseball, comes up and gives you a pointer, you know, you might look at him and go,
right,
here, you throw the ball. Show me how you throw the ball. Okay, now don't tell me how to throw the ball anymore. But it might be a good pointer. It might be something that he sees that you don't recognize because you're not watching you play. You know, it might be something, but you have that teenage angst and that kind of like chip on your shoulder, you know, we all have it of like, I know everything. So that's why I think it's just important to, you know, just as a parent, you know, and it's hard, you know, it's life, but try your best to just keep an honest and open and healthy relationship with your child so that when they are in certain situations, they'll look at you as somebody that they respect and that they trust, rather than somebody that's just trying to, you know, get under their skin.
Drake, I'm telling you, I was blown away. I speak for so many people when watching that documentary. I mean, your poise, your parent, your dad. I mean, honest to God, I mean, from the bottom of my heart, I mean, thank you for doing that. I think so many of us that are parents and loved you guys, I mean, you really, I don't even know if you felt the energy of like, for us sitting there watching what you did, but it's going to have a huge ripple effect. So I hope you and your family are giving yourselves a lot of credit because, man, that, for you to tell that story, you're so brave. Drake Bell, everybody. You can follow him on Instagram. Amazing album coming out. So much more to come from you. And of course, Quiet on Set is the documentary we all can't stop watching and talking about. Love you, Drake Bell. Wishing you so much more success to come.
Likewise.
Thanks.
podcast.